Hey, what's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent, and fresh in my mind, as I am coming off of it, just logging out of Guild Wars 2, I wanted to give you my thoughts and feelings on the new specializations, as well as my re-emergence into the Guild Wars 2 scene, and how I feel about it, especially coming from Swords of Legends Online, Bless Unleashed, playing Final Fantasy XIV, and just really kind of getting back into MMOs, playing all these different ones, and how does Guild Wars 2 fare in between all of those games? And immediately, I gotta say, first impressions before I even get into the nitty-gritty of these new specializations or the new expansion is that, dude, Guild Wars 2 has got some freaking originality, it's got some style, and every time I log back in, I'm always reminded of how underrated this game is. Like, oh my god, I'm so glad that it's becoming a little bit more popular again, and I think with this next expansion, people are going to love it, or fall back in love with the game. As is the nature of Guild Wars 2, it is a game that is less about daily grinding, just like a main game you have to play every single day, and it's more like you just kind of come back into it. But you played it already, probably, you already know that's the style of game that it is, and we are jumping back into it. So, first class that I got to play as was the Virtuoso. Now, currently, I would have to say my most played is the Berserker or the Warrior class inside of this game, because I did like the acrobatics and everything, but I switched to Mesmer somewhat recently, and I think it's like one of the most unique classes of all MMO. So the Virtuoso being like a floaty, bladey, AoE, you know, maelstrom of damage, that sounded pretty sexy, but a little bit different than what I'm used to. And no, it's super awesome. So I think what you're going to have to keep aware of with this specialization is that you might potentially lack some mobility. It really is just so heavy-handed, giant, massive AoE deeps. And, yeah, it's a little bit different than what you're used to, maybe, possibly, but if you see the Rain of Swords, basically, it's a firestorm, or a frost storm. If you see, like, you have a giant sword that you can throw from the sky, that's basically Meteor, and it has a lot of parallels with just, like, Black Mage and just, like, big magic damage if you play Mage, a little bit, maybe in World of Warcraft, or, really, honestly, I feel like the Mesmer has a lot of archetypal feel, mechanical feel, to magic casters inside of games, where in this game, the Elementalist feels like like, what the crap is Elementalist in Guild Wars 2? It's like Avatar, The Last Airbender or something. So Mesmer, even though it has some gimmicks, actually does feel very magey. But this one, now we have tons of skill shots, tons of preparation, which I think is really cool, and it is a very ranged gameplay style that really focuses on controlling the battlefield with area denial. So that's really neat. If you guys, you know, play certain classes like that in some other MMOs, you might really appreciate Mesmer. So lots of swords and everything. I think I'm going to go Dagger, Sword, Great Sword. That's kind of what I was playing. I actually perused PvP a little bit with this class because I mostly played Mesmer as a PvP class. Didn't seem very survival-y, and I kind of lost some awkward 1v1s. Yeah, obviously I don't know how the class is played. I haven't played Guild Wars 2 in a while, but in the end, it was really cool. Like, if you had your team kind of set you up, I could really see this being epic in PvE, but like, you just press all your buttons and just watch the stuff and things happen. Even though there's not true combos exactly, you can just press everything and it's all happening at once. You've got like swords coming in one direction. You got sword Kamehamehas, you have sword meteors, sword firestorms, sword whirlwinds. It's crazy, and it's very rare to see these kind of classes, but the inspiration might be a little bit from wuxia and Eastern inspiration overall, which I think is the whole theme of everything, which we'll get into, but might have seen a class like this with Psy Blades in WildStar, or definitely especially games like maybe like Blade and Soul, Swords of Legends Online, things like that. Like Eastern, especially wuxia, kung fu style classes, sometimes will have floating swords. That's kind of what the gimmick is with this one, except it's pretty, and then they shatter everywhere, and it's giant AoE explosions. So pretty neat. I really appreciate it, especially with the focus of all the other classes seemingly being on mobility. Mesmer definitely has a unique place here, and I think this makes Mesmer so cool. I'm definitely going to continue to main Mesmer, and honestly, I feel a little bit that maybe Guild Wars 2 devs really like Mesmer. Mesmer kind of is it's like the most unique class. Again, that wasn't my first main, but that's what I'm leaning towards because it's just really cool. And if you guys don't know, the main gimmick of Mesmer is that it has lots of random applications. It kind of uses chaos magic, and you just kind of do a lot of deception-based gameplay. But with this specialization, you lose a little bit of that deception and the cloning and the shattering. Not really. I mean, you can still use clones, but this is more front-loaded of, okay, big, giant AoE chaos damage magic, which is a fantasy that hasn't quite fully been realized with Mesmer, and now has. Alright guys, so the next specialization that I was able to jump into was the Willbender. Now Willbender overwhelmingly feels pretty interesting, I think, for Guardian. Now we have a lot of mobility with this class, but I just immediately, the game feel, what is it? Where the last one, Virtuoso, felt very magey and MMO-ish and just kind of brought to an extreme. This one is bringing the game in this class, this archetype, it almost feels like an entirely different MMO at this point. So specifically, it feels like Age of Wushu, it feels like a little Blade and Soul, it feels specifically like if you've ever played a Wuxia MMO, that vibe. And specifically what that is basically, it is very mobile, it's very kind of like rotation based, as in combo based, but it's kind of like stick and move. You know, where games like World of Warcraft or generally Guild Wars 2 is very free flowing, free roaming, lots of dodges and stuff like that, and you're never really stuck in place unless you get hit by CC. This class, it sticks itself, and it kind of almost feels like a really sticky warrior that still has more options for mobility potentially. As in, I don't know, it's a very unique overall game feel that I'm trying to describe, and it just really helps if, have you guys played a Wuxia MMO, have you played Blade and Soul or something like that, where you know, or like a fighting game, when you're doing attacks, you're kind of stuck in place, but otherwise you can move all over the place. That's kind of what's going on with this class. There's lots of punching, there's palm attacks, just very martial arts, and it feels very monkish, actually. So, yeah, Guardian, I think, kind of makes the most sense to really make as like a new monk, and with this, you know, obviously expansion being very Eastern influence, okay, here we go. Here's kind of our monk-ish class, where, yeah, I definitely see a lot of parallels between certain warrior attacks and stuff like that, and that's kind of a little bit the theme, maybe, with certain of these specializations we're going to see as it goes on, but it seems like they're really kind of mixing and matching technologies that they've already made. You know, like, I guess, like, this class kind of does feel like a sort of an expansion of the warrior, or a blending of Guardian and warrior playstyles in order to give it a different kind of feel. So yeah, if you look at the abilities, just read them, you know, they will have different effects and everything like that, but overall, like, you might say, okay, that's 1,000 cuts, okay, that is basically the charge from this ability, that's this ability from this class, and you can kind of see that. So yeah, this does vibe a little bit with warrior-ish, but the feel overall is actually totally unique. So with this gameplay, I decided to actually go into the Ice Zone, do Claw of Jormag. I don't know why, I just wanted to see, like, okay, am I tanky? Am I useful? Is this like a PvP specific build? I actually am getting the vibe that this is going to be a PvP focused, or maybe specifically for certain dungeon experiences, sort of specialization. I'm not really sure. Some of the game, it kind of does revolve around stuff like that. You got to keep that in mind. But no, I think this would be really fun in PvP, but for the open world boss fight sort of experience, didn't feel like I brought a lot to that as utility, and the overall, the combat just felt very straightforward with, yeah, you want to, everybody kung fu fighting, this should be, probably should have PvP'd with this one. Probably. So that's just kind of my general thoughts and feel on it. I felt like I had way more utility playing my warrior, or Mesmer especially. This one felt very selfish, but maybe I should have read the abilities a little bit more. Maybe there's some deeper stuff going on in there. Maybe if I landed certain abilities, it would create boons or spread boons, stuff like that. Got to definitely dive into the game a little bit deeper, because Guild Wars 2 actually has a tremendous amount of depth. It's not just flashy abilities and, you know, cool mobility and stuff like that, seeing cool combos happen. A lot of the time, when you play your class right, you're spreading boons, you're creating boons, or you're healing, or you're doing a lot of kind of like under the cover sort of stuff, like things that are just a little bit, you know, behind the screen that you got to look into the numbers for, that really totally make the experience. So yeah, this class seems like it's got a high skill ceiling for sure, and if that's probably what you want. If you play games like Blade and Soul and stuff like that, you play for those fighting game mechanics, the risk reward, and yeah, I've definitely felt that with this one, because I just totally underperformed. I know it, and I'm sorry I'm not really doing it justice. This Willbender really feels like it's going to be a really fun 1v1 kind of class. And finally, the last specialization that I was able to try out was the Harbinger, and this is basically going to be, I don't know, it's an alchemist, you know, like it's going to be like the plague doctor kind of thing. It's really interesting though that the necromancer normally has been focused on just like really just survivability, and with the tremendous lack of mobility, like infamously so. But this class just on its head, it is actually hyper mobile, and I actually had a really good example here where I was playing in one of the fractals where I needed a lot of mobility to escape a monster that was chasing me, to also dodge poorly, I might add, different AoE attacks and things like that. So So with this, you now have a tremendous amount of mobility, but you are sacrificing survivability by literally a ton of your abilities will inflict a blight on yourself. So if you're somebody who really loves risk reward in terms of like damaging yourself in order to damage other people, or damage yourself a little bit to and eventually heal yourself a little bit better, just that sort of tug of war with your own mechanics, this class is probably going to be it. I really appreciated actually how straightforward this one was. Overall, even though it's like very plague doctory, even though there's like lots of damage over time and stuff like that that you got to keep in mind, and I definitely played very poorly. Overall, you just drink potions whenever you need it, which reminds a lot of the engineer class, because they also have the whole alchemy thing going on. This one's going to be a little bit more apothecarian. So this one is darker. And also, I think some people have related it basically like engineer mixed with thief, kind of brought to the necromancer. And that's actually how it feels. There's tons of dodges, tons of mobility. I love how easy it is to actually just kind of keep the combos rolling or just kind of keep playing. It depends on your secondary weapon, though. I feel like this class is really good to pair with different weapons. And you got to keep that in mind, guys, as well. Guild Wars 2 works on a 2-weapon system, as well as how you're also mixing and matching with your other trait lines. A specialization is just a single trait line that does greatly modify how the class is played, but then you still have pretty deep freaking customization within this game. So I'm really just scratching the surface, but from what I can tell, this is basically like, damage over time, hyperactive necromancer. So you're not going to be summoning lots of different minions. You're not going to have like the whole tanky, giant, epic Death Lord thing going on. Like, you're not a Death Knight with this one. It definitely feels totally different, which I really appreciate. So each of these specializations so far has brought forth a true fantasy of like a unique class that we've kind of seen from other games that we haven't really been able to see to fruition in Guild Wars 2. So I think at first glance, maybe you might just see, okay, this is kind of a mix of these two classes put together, thrown up here. I actually think that this is, just from my first impressions and being cynical and critical, I actually think that the overall game feel has been radically different from their base classes, generally, kind of, sort of, and then definitely, like, between these different classes, and within the scope of the game, I think they definitely add something new, and I think they're also thematically fitting with what is supposed to be happening with the future. So that's coming from my experience just fresh out of the gate playing. I just recently was playing solo and a few other martial arts games, non-MMOs as well, such as Naraka. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm totally vibing with what's happening with these classes. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And do you like the whole concept of specializations or class awakenings and things like that inside of MMOs? Or would you rather just have totally brand new classes or races or what have you? But overall, are you excited for any of these three? I'm going to tell you right now, actually, the Harbinger was a lot of fun, but dude, the Virtuoso, Mesmer's kind of hype. I gotta play a little bit more with Virtuoso. I think I'm gonna add some, some blinks and some, a little bit of mobility to it, but I think, dude, just pressing all the buttons and seeing just the whole screen light up purple is kind of epic. I just love seeing the big numbers, you know what I'm saying? So maybe I'll get addicted to that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, but that's pretty much it. That's my impressions, or pre-impressions, I guess, just little teasers of the elite specializations that they've shown so far with Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons. Look forward to me covering it a little bit more, as well as at the end of the year, around December 15th, we're all going to be Let's playing Guild Wars 2 all the way up until February, when we're going to be able to play the expansion all together as a guild. Much love. See you in the next one.